The senior White House correspondent and rotating host of the Sunday Briefing, Jacqui Heinrich, who was on the dais tonight when everything was unfolding. Jacqui, very interesting and riveting news conference that we were just watching there, including our former colleague, Judge Jeanine Pirro, who's now the U.S. Attorney for the district. What else can you share tonight? You were literally right there. I understand you're going to be the president of the association, the Correspondents Association, fairly soon.
That's right. I was next to the vice president when all this happened. We were seated on stage, and from where we were sitting looking out at the crowd, we just saw Secret Service agents rushing toward us. When the agents came out from behind us onto the stage and it became clear that this was a security situation, we got down onto the ground. I was down on the ground right behind the little curtain on top of our tables, hiding for a little while until Secret Service allowed me to crawl behind the stage into the hold, which was just adjacent to where the vice president and the president were being held. And we were receiving updates from Secret Service on what was happening. It was unclear at that point if there was a threat still in the room. The scariest part for me was when I was still lying on the stage and there were agents, armed agents with their guns drawn, scanning the crowd, talking to each other and saying, "Are you tracking that? Are you seeing anything?" And they were saying no. And at that point, we didn't know if there was a threat still out there. And it was, you're wondering, do I move? Do I crawl behind the stage right now while they don't see anything? When it became clear that they were still, moving around and starting to release our area a little bit, that we could crawl behind the stage, I went back there and got a better word from the detail. And they said that a gunman had tried to come in from outside the secure perimeter, that they were scanning the room for any, other threats. They didn't think that there were any, and that the president, this is what really stood out to me, the president, from the very minute this happened, said that he wanted the show to go on. And so we stayed back there for some time while Secret Service did its job to clear the area and figure out, the extent of this. And some time passed, almost an hour, and there were hotel staff being told, get the plates ready, get the head table sorted, fix the curtain that got messed up on the front of the table, until the decision was made by law enforcement that they should follow protocol and do this another time. But listening to what was happening on the other side of all of that and seeing the person who was responsible for it is really something. It is not how we expected this night to go. It speaks to just the risks that, we face today, bringing crowds together, the sort of heightened political tension, and sad that this night could not carry on. But I thought the president's remarks were fitting, that everyone in that moment was together, and that it speaks to the importance of the First Amendment and the rights that we have as a country.
Yeah, Jacqui, it's Alicia. And also the president even said tonight, he said he was going to really let it rip. And then he realized if he would have gone back on stage that he probably wouldn't have been appropriate, because he also was grateful for the journalists there, and everyone in the room seemed to be grateful for each other. And we are so glad to see that you are safe. Hearing your story really is just harrowing. I can't even imagine being there. One of the reporters in the news conference we heard with law enforcement did ask, did the Secret Service fail? And I believe it was a police chief pointed out, well, this was a multi-layered security situation here, and that's exactly what we saw in action. But just like, as you know, with Butler, Pennsylvania, the actions of the Secret Service will be kind of peeled apart. They will be looked at layer by layer. What happened? How did this person get into the hotel, manage to get the weapons in the hotel, and stay in the hotel as well? And the president was very complimentary, especially, and he talked to the agent in particular who took the bullet into that bulletproof vest. What are your thoughts on that as this investigation is just getting underway?
Well, in the moment, the mayhem in the crowd was really from Secret Service trying to scan for any additional threats. And it was unclear to us while that was going on if there was a threat in the room. That was what was scary for us. But we learned very quickly that this happened outside the secure perimeter, and that there was never a threat in the room. We did hear some noise. From my vantage point, it sounded like plates clanging. It it wasn't clear what it was had happened outside the secure perimeter. When the president talks about, whether this was a failure of Secret Service or not, I think it's true. They did do their job. They stopped the threat. It never got inside. Had that threat gotten inside the ballroom, we can only imagine what that might have looked like and felt like. There were 3,000 people in that room, and no one was hurt, which is really a miracle. I think that he's right, though, to mention that, it's when you talk about having a space that's not secure, it's a hotel, after all. And at what point do guests start getting, scanned when they come in? The fact that there can be guests there in the hotel that night that are not attending the event might be something that in future years we have to think about. This is not something that we have had to face in the past, and it's something that we're going to have to reconcile in the future, and especially next year when I put on this event as the president of the association, taking over from Ouija in July. I'm sure we're, as an association, going to have a big conversation about that, and my heart goes out to her as well. We were set to speak tonight. She was going to speak. I was going to speak. The president obviously was going to speak. The mentalist was going to speak. There was a lot of planning that went into this, and I thought that she handled that moment with a lot of grace. And the president held it together for all of us, too, because he did say from the outset, we're going to keep going. We're going to make sure that this show goes on. And we were shocked to hear that. We were like, really? Are you sure? How are we going to eat dinner now?
Right.
I bet, yeah.
But that was his first reaction, and that speaks to his experience as someone who has faced these threats multiple times now, that's his attitude. It's really something. It's a moment in history. Afterward, I was taken with my fiance, who's a member of Congress, in a bus that was dedicated to members of Congress, driven by Capitol Police to the Capitol. I walked through the basement of the Capitol, took my shoes off because it was a very long walk, and then hailed an Uber out there and then came to the Bureau to talk to you all. But it was, for a while, difficult figuring out where people would go because there were 3,000 people in there, and we were told for quite a while that the show was going to go on. And during that moment of conflicting reports as to whether someone had been shot, whether the room was being evacuated, whether there was an active threat, that was what was the scariest. Luckily, it was all contained on the outside, and thank God for that.
Jacqui, I can't imagine everything that you saw and how that must have struck you emotionally. I'm also curious about some of the others that you saw there. Immediately, what comes to mind, not just the broad group of all of you, but in particular, Caroline Leavitt, who is 8.5, 9 months pregnant, Erica Kirk, and even the First Lady, Melania Trump, who has seen her husband now go through these attempts on his life. Can you add a little color about their circumstances?
So the hold that the principals were in was directly adjacent to ours. It was, when I say ours, I mean the other members of the White House Correspondents Association board. The whole 8 of us were on stage with the president, the vice president, the first lady, and Caroline Leavitt. And the administration officials were taken to an adjacent hold that was next to ours. And we were getting information passed back and forth from the president's Secret Service detail, because it was literally just a curtain between us for a little while until he went into a different room. And Ouija, the president of the WHCA, went down to speak with the president and figure out what was going on and whether he did, in fact, really want to continue the night. She came back and told us. And so we were waiting right next to the opening of the stage with the hotel staff who were waiting on orders to bring the food out. They had staffers going out there sort of fixing the tables for a little while, and we were all asking ourselves, well, we need to make an announcement. We need to say something about what's gone on, even if it is, we'll give you more information in a moment. And so we huddled there to sort of piece together from what we were told by Secret Service. We are a room of journalists, after all, what we could share with our colleagues in the room, and then also with the world. I was trying to get emails out. I got a few out. I think there was a Wi-Fi problem. I was texting, our executives that were in the room. The first person I texted was my fiance and my mom to let them know that I was all right, because anyone, watching from home, I'm sure had a lot of questions. And when I got blips of service, I tried to get that word out. But didn't expect to be crawling in an evening gown tonight. That's for sure.
Oh, no, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Jacqui, can we talk a little bit about the hotel? Because It's a massive hotel. I was there years ago, but it's a long walk up and everything, but it sounds like the suspect was staying inside the hotel, chilling to think about. But when you have an event like this and you have guests that are staying there, and you probably don't know this off the top of your head, but one of the questions is, do they search the rooms ahead of time? Do they search them prior? Is this door to door? How much interruption happens with the guests who are there? There's that question. And then additionally, the president says this is going to happen again in the next 30 days. And I'm just wondering, from a security standpoint, how that happens.
Well, I would imagine that if it happens in the same location within the next 30 days, there are going to be probably some changes necessary to how it's planned. I'm not sure that as a planner on that board, I don't know how we could get that together in 30 days. The president wants to. I know Ouija wants to. I'm sure everything possible will happen to make that happen. But we've run into this issue before. It was a couple years ago when Joe Biden was president, and there was a Gaza protester that was staying at the hotel and tried to come in and make a scene. And that was an issue then for the same reason. That protester was staying there and had been there for days. Secret Service and local law enforcement, they shut down the roads in the hours ahead of time. It's in a major sort of traffic artery right there on Connecticut Avenue, so you can't really shut down traffic too early before something like this. But the fact that you've got guests in rooms coming in and staying there, that is something I'd want to hear more from law enforcement about. How do you secure against those possible threats? Do you have to screen everyone that comes through? Do you have to shut down, the guests who are coming in and make it more selective? I don't even know how you would do that. But maybe something we need to look at.
Incredibly difficult, right? Mm-hmm. Considering this is constantly, yearly hosted in this hotel.
And it has been for many, many years. I mean, we've been doing this dinner since Calvin Coolidge. And so it is a new problem that we'll have to figure out how to wrestle with that. But certainly just a miracle that everything went as it was supposed to, that Secret Service, sprung into action, that no one was hurt, that everyone is with us, the president, the vice president, the first lady, everybody in that room, every soul in that room, that nobody was injured is really incredible. And it was scary, but, the fact that we're here talking about it really speaks to the dedication of our law enforcement officers, the process that they have, how they spring into action, muscle memory kicks in, and how lucky we are to have that.
Yeah, lucky indeed. And it certainly undergirds the president's argument that, listen, it is high time, long beyond time, that we have a secure ballroom. You heard him mention it in the news conference afterwards, Jackie, that, listen, this would take some of this potential problem out of the equation.
He did say that, but he also said, he was asked, after Butler, there was a period of time where outdoor events were discouraged. Are you going to have to avoid indoor events now, too? And he said, well, no, if I avoided indoor events, I wouldn't be able to do anything. So I think it's just a matter of figuring out how to make something as secure as it can be. When you're in a room of 3,000 people and there are multiple layers of security to get into that room, there are checks to make sure that you've got tickets, before you can even come down an escalator. The pieces that were in place were effective. But when you have somebody like in the video that they released, charging a checkpoint, and thankfully they were stopped right there, because had they gotten in, it could have been a massacre.
Jackie, the president, as you just said, you can't, after Butler, he couldn't move everything inside. There's a limit to what he is willing to limit. But the first lady was also in the room. This president is also a man with a family that loves and cares for him, and now they have gone through something so significant that feels like a repeat for the third time.
Yeah.
I can only imagine what was going through the First Lady's mind. She's a famously pretty private person, and we were grateful to have her there with him tonight. I can't speak for her, obviously, but the fact that the president thanked her and mentioned that she had been, she was great and she went through a lot, I think he was thinking of her as well. Thinking of Caroline Leavitt, too, who's about to have her second child, and her husband worrying for her in that moment. Everybody in that room had someone that loved them, that was worried about them. But being up on that stage and watching Secret Service rush toward you with their guns drawn, start to come over tables, and then having more agents come from behind you onto the stage, telling you to get down, whisking the vice president. I mean, I was right next to him, and they pulled him out of there while I went down. I do have to give credit to my fellow board member, Andy Harnick of Getty Images, who was taking photos as this was happening. He popped up and he was doing his job to the point where Secret Service was like, get down.
Get down.
And,
Jacqui, I hate to interrupt. I want to get to David Spunt very quickly. We've got an update on the shooter, Jacqui Heinrich. Great reporting as always. Appreciate that.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.